Okay, here we go. This is an example screencast of the history of Venice. So my project is just an overview to help you guys understand the big context of Venice, especially the beginning, so that you can do a screencast about just your specific topic. The readings all come from Venice, A New History, which was published in 2012 and is written by Thomas F. Madden. It is recent narrative. It's a narrative history of all of Venice, but it's updated to include a lot of the latest scholarly research on La Serenissima, which is another name for Venice. So this is my presentation. Here's the criteria that you should follow when you're making your presentation. It should be organized and clear. You should show a lot of familiarity with the period of time in Venice that you're studying, and it should be accurate, right? You should try to get your facts straight. Use a lot of examples and images. I think I have an image on just about every slide. I try to make my images big, and I try to make slides not have too much text so that it's clear for the viewer to see the pictures. There should be good connections and context. You can connect it to other things that you know about Venetian or Italian or Renaissance history. You should also try to connect it to TOK. And of course, the quality of your visual aid and your screencasts. Okay, these criteria are also shared in the same document that says which student has which topic. So, benvenuti a Venezia, Italian there for welcome to Venice. This is St. Mark's Square in the Middle Ages. This is a famous painting by Bellini, and that's St. Mark's Cathedral in the background. This is the flag of the Republic of Venice, and you may already know that the winged lion, which is the Lion of St. Mark, is the symbol of Venice. Here's a nice aerial satellite view of Venice. You can see that the main island of Venice looks kind of like a fish. And that river, it's not a river, but that canal, that S-shaped canal that you can see going through the middle is the Grand Canal. Okay, so there is Venice. And the first people who lived in Venice more than 1,000 years ago were called the Incolai Lacunae, the lagoon dwellers. Before the beautiful city was there, it was kind of a swampy, marshy place, not very nice to live in. But some wealthy people decided to move to Venice, not because they liked mosquitoes and swamps and mud, but because their homes were being attacked. The Roman Empire was collapsing in the 5th and 6th centuries AD, and as the Roman Empire collapsed, a lot of invaders that the Romans called barbarians were coming in, Germanic invaders and Hungarian invaders, and there was a lot of crime and murder and warfare, and so some of the wealthy and middle-class people living in the Italian mainland decided to run off to the Adriatic Sea in Venice. They did take some of the Roman traditions with them. One thing that you'll see throughout the history of Venice is a tradition of republican government, which is another way to say a type of democratic government. So they didn't just have kings ruling them in Venice. They had the people were working together to rule the city. Venice was also very closely connected to what was left of the Roman Empire, which is Constantinople, today's Istanbul, in what today we call Turkey, but in those days was just called the Eastern Roman Empire. At that time, it was a Greek-speaking place. They were Orthodox Christians, or just Christians, but that would become Orthodox Christianity. And Venice, which is right here, considered Constantinople to be the legitimate continuation of Rome. Once Rome fell to the barbarian invaders, the people of Venice swore their allegiance to Constantinople as the direct descendant of Roman civilization. So in the west of Europe, in what is today France, you had the Carolingian Empire, which is Charlemagne, and also known as the Holy Roman Empire. Those are the Franks, okay? And in the east of Europe, you had the Orthodox Christians, who were the Byzantines. And basically, and for a lot of Venice's history, it was, especially its early history, it was stuck between the Western Franks and the Eastern Byzantines. In name, Venice usually sided with the Byzantines in Constantinople, but sometimes the Franks succeeded in influencing Venice as well. This is the Adriatic Sea right here. Of course, here is Italy. Right here is the Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, etc. over here. And there's Venice at the top of the Adriatic Sea in the Gulf of Venice in the Venetian lagoon. In 810 AD, the king of the West, Charlemagne, and the emperor of the Byzantines, Nicephorus, made a deal where they recognized Venice as a Byzantine territory, and they also gave the city trading rights along the Adriatic coastline. Here's a picture of Venice from the Middle Ages. And basically from the 9th to 12th century, which is to say the 800s to 1100s, Venice developed into a city-state, which made it different from the rest of Western Europe. Most of Western Europe was very feudal, it was traditional, and it was rural, which means country, agrarian. There weren't big cities. Whereas Venice was a pretty big city for the Middle Ages. It was very commercial, right? A lot of trading, and it was very urban. So vocabulary there. Commercial means that there was a lot of trading. So we associate Venice with trade and commerce. The patron saint of Venice was Saint Mark. Saint Mark wrote one of the 4 Gospels of the Christian Bible. And the 4 Gospels are 4 different versions of the life of Jesus. Okay, I don't want to go into detail because you'll get too bored, but that's what Saint Mark is famous for. There's a story about the Venetians going to the city of Alexandria, which is right here. Okay, this is actually the Islamic Empire. This is the Abbasid Caliphate, all right, which was the Islamic Empire. And so you can see that the Muslims controlled Alexandria when 2 traders from Venice, way up here, went down to Alexandria, and they had a lot going on, but they ended up deciding to steal the body of Saint Mark because that he was buried in Alexandria. And they stole it successfully, and they brought it back to Venice. At least that's the story. And then St. Mark became this patron saint of Venice. A couple students will tell that story more in detail, I think. You can see this picture right here. This is actually from the Basilica di San Marco, the St. Mark's Basilica, the most important church in Venice. And this is a picture of the 2 Venetian traders over here. And these are the port inspectors, right? These are like the customs officials. And you can see it's a little stereotypical. They're wearing turbans. This was done way, way after the event actually happened, if it ever did happen. And the story is that they hid the body of St. Mark under a bunch of pork, raw pork meat, which made the Muslims not want to search through that basket. That's probably not true, but it's a great story. And here is the Basilica di San Marco. This is the Piazza di San Marco. St. Mark's Cathedral is something we'll talk more about when we're in Venice. The Venetian leader was called the Doge. That word is connected to the duke or the dux, but he was not a normal duke. He was not just somebody chosen by a king to rule over the Venetians. The Doge eventually was elected by the people of Venice in a complicated procedure which we may learn about more when we go to Venice. And this made Venice a republic. You may know, some of you may know that a republic is a representative democracy, which is to say it's a place where citizens elect representatives who make the laws. It's not a kingdom. In other words, the Venetian government was more similar to a modern democratic country than a medieval kingdom or fief. Okay, and this is actually a diagram of the government of Venice. And while it's a little bit different from the diagram of the government of the Russian Federation or the United States or the United Kingdom, you can see here there's a separation of powers, that the leader, the Doge, the executive, did not have all the power. There were different councils of citizens which also held power in Venice. Here's another Doge. This is Orso Ipato, and I have this picture because I like his hat. This is the Doge's palace, the Il Palazzo Ducale, right on the seacoast there. This map is in Spanish, but sorry, it's in Italian. But as Byzantine power declined, eventually Constantinople fell, and it was replaced by the Ottoman Turks. And during that period of decline, the Venetians took the place of the Byzantines in controlling a lot of the sea. So everything that is in yellow here, all of the sea that is in yellow, was mostly controlled by Venice. Okay, sometimes they lost control of it, but they were trying to control all of this area. So Venice actually became a maritime empire, which is to say a sea empire, kind of like England did, the United Kingdom did many, many years later. The Venetian Republic lasted for a very long time. It lasted for over 1,000 years, from the late 600s, the late 7th century, until Napoleon showed up in 1797. This was a great irony because Napoleon was the Republican or Democratic emperor, another irony, of the new revolutionary France, and he ended the Republic of Venice. Venice's formal name was the Most Serene Republic of Venice in the Venetian language, and in Italian that's often shortened to La Serenissima. This shows you one value that Venice had, because serene means calm or tranquil or peaceful, and it was originally used to describe a calm sea or a peaceful cloudless sky. So the Venetians used the calm sea as a metaphor for their own government, which they said was calm because the citizens got to participate in decision making, very serene. Another interpretation is that Venice preferred trade rather than to participate in a lot of warfare and military conquest. This is a picture of the Rialto, which is Venice's commercial or trading center, with the old wooden Rialto bridge in the background. Now there's a stone bridge that you'll see when we go there. In spite of the lovely name La Serenissima, there were a lot of wars and conflict in Venice. And we're just about done. There are some words that come actually from the Venetian language, which is a Romance language like Italian and Spanish, but we might think of Venetian a little more like Catalan or Gallego, one of the smaller Romance languages of Europe. So some of the famous words from Venetian that we use in English today include ciao, arsenal, which comes from arsenale, gondola, which you may describe a telecabine as a gondola, but it was a boat that people rode in, and also the word ghetto, right, where the Jewish people of Venice were forced to live in the Middle Ages. Also, the word Venezuela means Little Venice. So when we get to Venice, Gil, Paula, and Patricia, you're going to be en casa. All right, again, there's the criteria. You might look that over in the shared document. And I think we're about done here. You should have a link to your screencast no later than study hall on Sunday night. Buona fortuna, good luck. I will do another screencast about how to post a screencast. We are done. Good job, guys. Thanks. Thanks for listening. I did all the work after all.